Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Monday. The homies are here. I got Jazz. Introduce yourself. Let the folks know who you are and what it is that you do.
And my name is Jasmine Price, and I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor in the states of Maryland and Virginia.
Okay. So tell me about the process of becoming a therapist in more than one state.
Ooh. I would like for it to be easy.
Yeah.
However, it is not, because each state has their own requirements. And so it's a little messy, because I'll admit I was not organized when I was doing my residency in clinical practice. But what you do is, what I encourage people to do is, when you graduate, figure out what states you want to get licensed in, figure out their requirements, make a copy of it, keep it, and then keep your clinical supervision in one place, so that when you apply, your supervisor can do their part and seal it, and then you can submit your hours to each state at the same time. So I'm also a fertility doula.
You a doula? I always wanted to interview a doula. I might need to bring you on for that to be a separate interview. Okay. Wow. You bring life into the world.
Well, no, I just
facilitate it.
Yeah, I just help the conception part.
Facilitate, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And part of that is because I was doing so much trauma work, and I've noticed that a lot of the Black and brown women that were coming to seek therapy were having fertility issues.
Okay.
And correlation, it doesn't necessarily mean causation, but I'm looking at their trauma history, and then I'm also looking at, when did they start birth control and how long were they on it? And working with them on that. So I was like, well, let me get the extra training from an institution so that I can actually be a fertility doula.
Okay. So it's called fertility doula, not just doula. Yes. Is fertility doula the usual title for a doula, or?
So there's different.
There's sets to doulas. I'm saying this like gangs. I don't care. So there's sets to the doulas, okay? Okay. All right. Okay. Cool.
You have birth doula.
Okay, birth doula. Okay.
Postpartum doula.
Postpartum doulas. Okay, so for after.
Yeah. So they'll come in while you sleep and take care of baby, and like sometimes they'll prep meals based on the type of plan that you select.
So they help you transition into motherhood, basically, or?
That too, and then they can also connect you to therapists. So there's a community of doulas, and there's a community of therapists that work together.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have deaf doulas.
Like for the deaf?
For people who are transitioning, and then for the families who also need that extra support as their family members transition.
And they're called deaf doulas? Yeah. Huh. Do you know why that's the title? I am fascinated right now.
I don't know much about deaf doulas.
Okay, I'm a clap to just to sync this up, but wow, I've learned so much in this little 2 minute. Okay, lost me for a sec. I'm gonna bring back. Okay, so you're a doula. We'll save that for another interview. That's fascinating. Okay, so race, in terms of racial, I don't think race and racial are a bit different though. Racial is usually referring to what is happening to the Black community. That's usually how racial is used. All right, so what were your other two categories be considered? Of interest. So trauma. Okay, so trauma. Okay, so racial, trauma. Do you have a third or no? You don't have to have a three, but I mean,
Body work.
Body work.
Yes.
So like awareness, like...
So I don't.
Dimensions.
So awareness of the body. And so I'm very prospective clients know I'm not just focused on what your symptoms are. I'm looking and observing mind, body, spirit.
So how you talk to yourself also.
How you talk to yourself, who you're around. Like, do you check in with your body when you wake up?
Oh, you preach off. Okay. All right. Okay. No, I got you. Okay. So, do you prefer Jasmine over Jazz?
You can call me either one.
Okay, just gotta ask, because I know folks who are like, no, it's just one name. It's not the other. Okay, so since the homies are here today, the homies is everybody watching us, obviously. What's it like managing a business as a therapist? The reason I ask this question is, I find a lot of you therapists are starting your own private practices, and each therapist has a distinct story behind why they started their private practice versus working for an institution. Would you like to tell me about that story?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So first, let me just say this. So now you have a lot of therapists who are talking about decolonizing mental health. When I graduated and when I was in grad school,
Yeah.
I was doing that work. We just didn't have a name for it. And then now it's like, oh my goodness, we have a name for it.
Yeah.
But once you enter into those spaces, most times the foundation is still centering whiteness.
Really? How so? Could you give me an example?
So I find that even though we try very hard, we are intertwined in colonization and capitalism.
Okay.
And so if we're not careful, we can still follow their blueprint while trying to help our communities.
We can become them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that that's what's happening a lot now. And so I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
Just being intentional. And I always tell people, check your intentions before you say or do anything. Like, what is your intention? And if it doesn't feel authentic and it doesn't align with your thoughts and what you're doing and your platform, then maybe you should take a step back.
Can I ask you another question?
Yes.
What would be an example of colonization within a Black institution?
Okay. So a big example is, okay, you have these students graduating from grad school who want to get their license, right?
Yeah.
And you're offering this really dope training. And then they go to pay and it's $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. To me, and I can only speak for myself, how is that elevating the community when everyone doesn't have access to it? That is a reflection of capitalism and colonization.
Okay, so the paywall makes it harder for folks to get to the place that you're claiming you want them to get to, but what you're doing is you're facilitating their opportunities to go through you versus them looking for other options that may be cheaper.
Absolutely.
And more affordable.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, we all understand a lot of folks don't have that money because they just got here.
And me, when I started my practice, I didn't have any money for real to start my practice.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything that needed to take place to start it. And when I was reaching out to people, I got so many closed doors, so many, well, this is how much I charge. And I'm looking around like, okay, so it's just me. And so, Google University, YouTube University helped me so much. And so once I got it up and running, I was reaching out to other therapists around me because I got full pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, well, try this therapist because, I'm looking at her website and it aligns, or a therapist.
When you said I got full really quickly, what do you mean by that?
So I officially opened my practice in June of 2018.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so by November, December, I was full.
And you were like, this the capacity. Okay, so did you ever have actually, let me let you finish where you were going with that first, and then we can get back to my question.
Well, what I was saying is that there were therapists who also reached out to me. And
Okay.
I'm seeing what you're doing. Are you open to having a conversation about what I would need to open my practice? And for me, absolutely. You have a lane, I have a lane. I'm not gatekeeping. Because it was hard for me doesn't necessarily mean that I want it to be hard for you or the next therapist or the next therapist.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, how much are you charging? I'm like, pay it for it, please. Because you're going to encounter therapists that I don't, that need to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Did you charge them, or were you just like, hey, in the future, have me covered, keep my name in your mouth? That's it. Just ask, you keep my name in your mouth. Okay. So on the business side of things, and the reason I find this topic of business to be interesting, especially when it comes to therapists, is as an advocate, I run a production company, right? So at first we created content starting on Instagram with a campaign that we did every Monday, and we did events where folks could shop for their therapists, right? And I think by that point, we probably got a little bit under 40 people in the therapy with the work that we did, which is major because most people's like, just to get one is a win. And I'm like, that is correct. But we were looking to normalize people reaching out to get therapy before the BetterHelps and all these like online platforms. I got you. We'll get there. We'll get there. Just I know. Just you're working on. We'll get there in a second because I have the same opinion from what I've heard. Because in my work, I advocate for both therapists and the client. So I let folks know whoever I work with, I'm not looking to have them over capacity because it's still about the quality of work you're going to get. And for them, we shouldn't be in a rush to burn out therapists because they're here to help. Because what that means is you're normalizing one of the things that therapy is supposed to help you deconstruct. And to pass that on would be very unfair, especially when it comes to the people that are trying to help you.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to business, did you ever have anybody that reached out to hold your hand through the business, or was it all from scratch, no matter what, from top to bottom?
I had, I think, 2 therapists that were there whenever I reached out and needed them. Mm-hmm. And it was mainly about how to navigate getting paneled with insurance companies.
Yeah. I've heard about that back there. Just tell me a bit about that. The hoops.
So a lot of therapists go back and forth of accepting insurance and not accepting insurance.
Okay.
And one of the main reasons why I'm not going in this moment where how I feel, not going to get off of the panels is because of the communities that I support. They still need insurance. And sure, you can have that conversation about them budgeting their money, but where they are in that conversation, there's so many other elements in between that.
Yeah.
And so I'm only paneled with 3.
Okay.
That's it.
So when you say panel, does that mean those are the insurance you're taking?
Those are the insurances that I take and that I am contracted with.
Okay, that door you're hearing in the background is my beautiful partner probably doing something out there, so I just want to let you know, okay? Okay, so is that how they call it when it comes to the insurance side? Because, like, this is the most I'm hearing. I know, like, insurance is, like, hoops and, like, you know, you got to do a lot. But, like, so each insurance company is paneled, and those are the only 3 that you're allowed to accept within the work that you're doing.
So, yes, those are the only 3. So if a client comes to me and they have one of those 3, then they can use their insurance. If they have another insurance that I don't accept, I'm considered out of network.
Okay.
And so if they choose to take that or still come to see me, I always encourage them. I have a list of questions for them to ask their insurance company so that they will know what they need from me, what they need from them to submit a claim for them to get the reimbursement back.
Okay.
Not all insurance companies do that, but it still is worth the conversation with them.
Okay. That's fascinating. So you are allowed to take on a client who doesn't have insurance? Okay. Does that ever put a little bit more burden on you as a therapist on the business side, or not really? It's still the same process.
It's, to take insurance.
Yeah, without insurance.
No, without insurance is a breeze.
Okay. So without insurance is better than with insurance. Got you. Okay, so tell me about the headache of that the insurance companies put therapists through.
So one of the biggest things is that people feel like therapy is confidential, and it is. I'm not going to say anything, but when you use insurance, I have to make a diagnosis in that first session, which is bananas to me. And then,
why is that bananas? Explain the banana peels.
So it's bananas to me because even in my training, I have a master's in forensic psychology. And so it takes like 3 or 4 sessions, maybe a month and a half, to even get a good enough snapshot of the person and their patterns and their behavior to give a diagnosis. When you are forced to give a diagnosis in that first hour, it leads to misdiagnosis, where you will see people will have like 4 or 5 different diagnoses in their chart. And it's like, when you could have just taken your time and done so.
So
given them one.
The business of the insurance forces you guys to make decisions that technically goes against your training.
Yes.
Now, when let's say 5 weeks, you have a better diagnosis of the person that you're seeing. When you add the newer diagnosis, are you allowed to take old diagnosis off those charts, or does that follow the person for the rest of their medical history?
For my chart, I take it off and then give an explanation. But I have no idea what the insurance companies are doing with it.
Yeah. So my partner, she has like a couple of illnesses that she deals with outside of mental health. And she's explained to me how dangerous it is as someone who, when it comes to hospitals, there are older things on your chart that may like be a ceiling of you can't get medicine for this because it says you have that, or you already receive enough, but it doesn't cover the actual situation that's going on. So would you say that also happens on the, you're giving me all the faces you serving right now. So
My mama.
yeah. I can see where this is going quickly. Is there ever a moment that you have to sit down with patients and say, hey, you need to start advocating for yourself? Because there's only so much I can do as your therapist.
It started when I was working for an agency and I was told that wasn't my lane.
Oh, the institution said, nah, you good, sis.
Yeah.
Oh, ooh. Oh, okay. What did that experience do to you?
And you can always also thank my mama for this. It fueled me.
Yeah.
Because then that lets me know that this is something that needs to be communicated.
And then, would you say that unfortunately companies like insurance and institutions work well together at the sacrifice of patients?
Yes.
Quite often?
Yes.
That's unfortunate.
And the providers.
Oh, the providers also. So it's a 3-bubble plan, and then you as the therapist are in the middle of, you're not really putting the patients first, which is what it's supposed to be, but they tell you, but it's a business.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your passion and your candor. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Okay, so let's talk about something a little bit lighter.
Okay.
You make really amazing content on IG. I feel the algorithm hasn't picked up on it, but like I've enjoyed a lot of your posts. And we're not going to touch trauma. We're going to do that later because that was a traumatic convo we just had when it came to insurance and companies and stuff like that. What made you want to become a therapist?
I have known I wanted to be in this field since 2nd grade.
Okay, 2nd grade. Wow. I didn't even know about the word therapist. Just knew like the words like shrinks, and that was like it.
Yeah. No, my mother is an educator.
Okay. Shout out to mom.
So she and my father was an admissions counselor too. And so she always had me with her.
Okay.
And I was always in the meetings with psychologists because she was director of student services for the county that I went to school in. And she also is a speech pathologist and a teacher. And I was just fascinated with this one Black psychologist. She was everything to me. And from that moment on, I knew that this was the field. Now, it changed a little bit for, what I wanted to do and where I am now. But yeah, I've always wanted to be a therapist.
Okay. Would you say knowing early what you wanted to be made it easy for you to figure out research, talk to other people, and figure out what part of the field you'd like to be in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what is your field exactly? Because I heard that word and I was like, I had never heard that word before. So you got to tell me more.
So I am a licensed clinical counselor and I do individual and couple and family therapy. And I also want to note that family therapy doesn't necessarily mean that you're bringing 20 people to a session. What I'm really focused on now is mother-daughter dynamics, which is also considered family therapy. And people don't normally count that as family therapy, but it is very important.
Why don't they count that as family therapy? Do you know, or is it just...
I think it's just because people get the idea that the whole family, the entire family unit is coming, and that's not absolutely necessary. Sometimes it's 2 people in the entire family dynamic that may need to come to therapy.
Do you also deal with blended families?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I asked, I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Daniel last week, who's also a family therapist. And do you guys know each other?
We do that.
Okay. I was talking to him. He wants me to put together a meetup with therapists that I've done sit downs with. And I said, cool, but I want to have more of you guys so we can like just do a dinner and you guys do your therapist thing. And I like just crack jokes. That's like my goal. Now, when it comes to why family therapy?
So I specialize in trauma.
Okay.
And
Tell me more about that.
this, so trauma informed care.
I like the hair flip. Oh,
That-
thank you for asking.
Trauma informed care means that you understand what trauma is, how it shows up, and how it manifests itself, and how you can nurture it so that it's a healing process and not something that you're just getting over or ignoring.
Okay.
And so the way that I've seen trauma show up, and the reason why decolonizing mental health is so important to me is because people like myself and people who look like me have a long-standing history of trauma that spans way before we were even thought about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, handed down.
And how it's manifested is showing up in so many different ways. And the one thing about trauma is, unless it is acknowledged and validated, you cannot heal it.
Yeah.
And we are always invalidated in this country every day, all day, and it's not acknowledged.
And we've also practiced invalidating ourselves.
Yes, internalized oppression.
Okay. So, what is your approach? Tell me about your approach. Yeah.
My approach is,
Just be honest. Be honest.
it is so not what you think a therapist is, right? So I meet people where they are.
Okay.
And we were talking earlier about, using we versus I.
Yeah.
I've always used we because when people come to me, it's not just you. I'm here with you. I'm supporting you. And until you can, I will do it for you.
Yeah.
And that takes a hierarchy out of this field that we've always had. It's solid. But I'm not here and you're not here. We're here because you've been with yourself forever. And I'm just meeting you. And there's things about you that I need to know so that we can work together effectively. And so I'm looking at what you're eating, how you're sleeping, who you're around. I want to pay attention to certain patterns when you're around certain people, when you're at work. What happens when you're overwhelmed? There's a lot of times when my clients will come and I'll have something to talk about and I'll be like, what's going on? It's different. Like, I'm getting something different from you today. What's really going on?
Yeah.
I pay attention to energy. I pay attention to how you're showing up. And I do talk about energy work. I talk about body work. My coordination of care does consist of a yoga studio. It consists of a holistic doctor. I have 2 that I can refer to. Reiki.
Okay, energy. Okay. Okay, Reiki healing. Okay.
Yes, right. And so we're talking about all of the things that you have the power to do to help yourself feel the way that you want to feel. It may not go away, but I'm going to help you live with it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to therapy to fix myself. Well, you're not broken.
Or my boy Kier said, maybe you were broken a long time ago and that's okay. Sometimes it's about, a lot of folks who go to therapy just want to go back to normal. But once you've experienced something, that normal is gone. That's it. You've had the experience. I had the conversation with the young man who was here before you came. He was like, I've always wanted to be a superhero, blah, blah, blah. Great guy, right? And I said, okay, cool. What superhero do you want to be? And he was like, Superman. I said, oh, word? He said, yeah. I was like, all right, so let's look at the story. He said, all right, cool, let's do it. I said, so you want your home planet to blow up. You'll lose your mom, dad, family, don't even get to know them, and then be raised by some strangers on a farm. You don't even know what a farm is as an alien kid. Hopefully you land in the right spot. And then maybe you might have morals, but you'll have super strength. He said, yeah, how about get to be a god? And I said, yeah, but like, you have to think about the price that has to be paid in that story before the person became who they are. I was like,
Everybody want to forget the story.
Yeah, and it's like, nah, each superhero power you picked or person that you're like, I want to be them. It's like, do you think you'd be able to be that great person that they became after that price is paid and you find this out later? Like, Clark didn't even know he was Superman until like his teenage years. He just knew something was off about him.
That sounds familiar.
And I was like, so now that we're in this field of mental health and wellness, we have stories. So for you, outside of second grade and Reiki healing and all these wonderful things that you do and holistic personas with great education that you've brought into this field, what would you say your story is?
My story is that I knew something was odd about me.
Okay. Tell me more.
So I do have a trauma history, a trauma past. And my therapist and I significantly worked through that. It took a while, but we worked through it.
So you were a therapist with a therapist before you became a therapist?
Absolutely. And I told her she can't ever go anywhere.
Oh, she's stuck. Got you. Okay. Got you. Okay. All right.
And that trauma really shaped a lot of my childhood. There's bits and pieces where I don't remember. It really shaped how I showed up.
Okay.
My mother, I'm one of two. My brother's 13 years older than myself, so technically I was the only child. And I was very angry and explosive.
Okay.
And just to know what it feels like to have or hold a big secret and having to manage your nervous system, go through puberty, go to school, show up, do what you're supposed to do.
Right. I like that. That came at the right time. Yeah.
I know how it feels to do all of those things. And then no one, like, people are like, oh my gosh, like, what's going on with her? But no one asking.
Everybody's just whispering.
Right.
Corners.
Or, talking to my mother about, why do you let her express herself like that? Or, you need to do this, or you need to whip her. All of those things, right? But there was really, truly, I was battling something. And no one ever wants to correct what happened. They only want to correct the behavior. And that's what I encountered so much during my life. And I never wanted anybody else to feel that way. So even though there is a behavior, I still see you.
Yeah.
That behavior, you're telling me something with that behavior, and I want to be able to help you work through that.
It's like body language. I say this often. Unfortunately, my entrance into this field and the work that I do came at the loss of my best friend. And one thing I observed, and I don't think it was ever anyone's fault, and what I say on camera, I say to everyone's face, so that doesn't change. And I'm actually really close with her folks. Her mom's my mom on this side, and her sister's my sister. When it comes to mental health emergencies and folks going through things, we obsess with wanting things to go back to normal, and we also obsess with we just want everything to be okay, but we don't obsess with the in-between when everything is okay again and what work do we need to do. And we all habitually start to put life in front of the things that are growing in the background that we're noticing, but since it's not a problem right now, we don't really take care of it. Yeah, I think that's like the best way to describe it.
We're very much reactive and not proactive.
And like a lot of folks are like, being proactive takes so much work. And it's like, yeah, but like, you don't think being reactive takes just as much or even more work?
And if you're already dealing with trauma, being reactive does more harm. In the long run, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, because being reactive requires so much energy.
A bigger amount, more explosive, as you said. Even when it comes to, I interviewed a young man that's going to be a 3-part interview. And so for Suicidal Awareness Month in September, I wanted to start giving real stories of people who went through, who survived. And for him, we did a whole sit down about his 2.5-year-long manic episode. And I was like, 2.5 years. And thank God he's here. We actually met at one of my jobs. He bought clothing. He told me about his story. And I said, no, you should come on and share it on the platform. He's like, but your platform's Black. I was like, no, it's ran by Black people. I was like, I'm down and open to interview anyone. It's ran by Black people because we don't have enough stories in those Black spaces. But I openly welcome anybody, and I would love to have, your story if you see that it's fit. And as he told me about the episode, working out, the medication not working, doctors trying to give him the wrong medicine or telling him they were prescribing him something that they weren't, and how a lot of doctors are allowed to get away with that. And then he told me about the story of his dad coming up to campus to check on him around his birthday when everything hit the fan. And it hit the fan. Yeah, it hit the fan. But I think of those stories, and one thing I'm trying to do right now, work on within our community, and my community is not just Black, it's everyone, but within my community is are you having the important conversations with your loved ones on how you would like to be treated and talked to when you're losing control?
That's so important.
Are you having the important conversations of, all right, let's say I'm non-responsive in my episode. What are your concerns? Because what happens is, if you're independent, and we know some independent folks, you start to do some things because you realize either you don't have anyone you can trust, or you may feel you're a burden and you're asking too much of everyone, but maybe everything you're asking for is enough. And you would like to be heard in a certain way when things are going bad, just to remind you that these people are on your side. Because how you talk to me if I'm not having an episode versus I am having an episode, those words are digested very differently. And sometimes you just need those key moments and those conversations before an emergency, when everything is calm, to really have a discussion for everyone to understand. If we could make enough time to do fire drills to get out of a building in case it's on fire, then we can make enough time to have the conversation of, if I'm having an episode or a panic attack or depressive, manic, I'm just out the window with it, please handle me this way.
My clients push back on those conversations a lot. And what I call it is a circle of support. And it's not a lot of people, and it's small for a reason. And then if you want to, you can have a backup.
Yeah.
But just like you said, they need to know how to talk to you and what works and what doesn't work, and how not to talk to you.
Yeah.
And be very clear about that so that they know what happens. And then it's like a safe word, just a simple text, because sometimes when people are starting to feel, okay, something's going left, let me text a safe word to the group of my circle of support. And then whoever has the capacity, they can talk amongst themselves on the side and show up for you the way that they need, or switch off.
And then what does the recovery period look like?
Yes, the aftercare is so important, because a lot of times some of my clients explain feeling shame that they couldn't do about themselves. And I get frustrated with society because they still drive home that you should be able,
I see it in your nose. Your nose was all sorts frustrated once you said that.
People, and we're not meant to do this by ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't. If we could.
That's where the original words of sharing is caring came from. And unfortunately, she's passed on, right? So I have reminders of her. But a lot of the content that I do, I learned a lot of mental health from her. Not experiencing her episodes, everything she educated me up to this point until we lost her. And then I was like, all right, so that's 2012 to 2018, June, ironically. And I was like, all right, I hate everybody. just gonna be honest. I was like, I hate everybody. I was like, oh, I really hate everyone. And I don't just hate them. I hate them with a passion, right? But that's not what this person will want of me. So what I can do in the meantime is, how do I mitigate giving people who may be in that position the proper tools to not be me or not be us when everything happened? And how do I let people know it's okay to get therapy? How do I let people know it's okay to trust a stranger? Because there are some bad experiences when it comes to trying to get therapy, where a lot of these establishments be dropping the ball, right? But there are also some good experiences. And then in the midst of doing our work, I came to realize, I think my guy Trey told me this from Virginia. He's also another therapist that I interviewed. One day I'm just going to send you all the clips. Like, these are all the therapists I've done work with and I interviewed, right? Therapy is like dating.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be the right fit. You're going to have to go from person to person to person until the person speaks your language or they're willing to accommodate and become what you need them to be as the therapist in order for you to learn from this person. Because you should at least have the freedom to choose, hopefully, if you're able to make it to have a therapist, right? And then what I also came to realize is you guys are people too. I've always thought you're people, but there is a certain point when it comes to the service of people getting therapy from you that you start to become the Big Mac and fries instead of the person that I like to laugh and have these conversations with. So how do you go about humanizing your experience as a therapist and reminding your clients, hey, we are folks, but don't have the wrong one too?
I think my face does it. But no, I've never.
That's a good track record. That's what I'm hearing. Because keep it honest.
The clients that I've
been blessed to have.
Yes, understand that. But most of the clients that have, been a little abrasive have been children when I was working with children.
Okay. So you have a history of working with both.
Because I started wanting to work with juvenile sex offenders.
Oh, wow. Is that a topic that you are willing to go into?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We here now. Tell me more.
So, and I'm perfectly fine with that. My trauma was sexual abuse.
Okay.
And I was intrigued of what happens, what goes on, right? And the way that juvenile sex offenders were treated, in my eyes, wasn't necessarily appropriate.
Okay.
And so I did want to work with juvenile sex offenders to see, to help, and to support. That quickly changed. I don't know why it changed. I think it was because I was only offered one internship, and it was working with the foster care system in Chicago.
Oh, dang. See, Chicago. Chicago. What year was this?
I went into grad school in 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
2009. Right in the middle of Ye's time over there. What that reaction? What was that time like for you? Was that enlightening for you?
It was.
Okay. How so?
It showed me a lot about myself.
Okay.
To be born and raised in North Carolina, and then graduate, and there weren't a lot of programs on the East Coast for people who wanted to major in forensic psychology. And so I ended up in Chicago, and I remember my dad driving us the entire way and getting out of the U-Haul, and he just had tears in his eyes because I've never been that far away from family.
Okay.
Dad's
still around?
Yeah.
Bless his heart. Keep going.
My Philly man. But and
He
look,
a Philly bull. I'm sorry. He a Philly bull.
he is.
Got you. Yeah, nah, they wear their hearts on the sleeves. Yeah.
Yeah. And looking back, I was a little naive, but me being naive allowed me to do my best work. Because I never knew that therapists went in the homes to do therapy until I started my internship. And then they was like, yeah, so this is the address. And I was like, address? So
Oh, you didn't know.
I didn't know at all. And so I was doing in-home therapy on the south side of Chicago, the west side, and the suburbs.
Have you talked to Unique about this yet? Have you watched her interview?
I have not.
I gotta send you her interview. You guys are like overlapping quite a bit in this because that's where she's from. So.
Oh, I knew she was from Chicago and now she's in Virginia, but we never talked in depth about my experience.
So her life was Chicago. Her experience therapy-wise was more on this end. Yeah. And Chicago's pretty country.
Listen, okay.
Yeah. So when you said that, I was like, oh, so you just moved from country to country technically. Yeah.
I did. But no, that experience was amazing for me. I had an awesome supervisor.
Yeah. Do you guys still stay in contact with each other? Okay, that's a real awesome supervisor. I didn't stay in contact with any of my supervisors when I graduated. But that's not what this is about. So, you said they only offered you one internship. What was the pivot to move on to something more in depth for yourself? And also, was that experience triggering for you at any point? Or was there enough distance in the work?
I think it was enough distance. It wasn't triggering. I definitely called. My mom was like, only one person wanted me. And my mom was like, that's the only person that needs you. And I was like, okay. And so I just went with it.
That's a gem. Yeah.
I went with it. And I enjoyed it. I did enjoy working with the families. Because essentially when you're working with children, you are working with the families. Yeah.
Okay. So what did you go on to after that experience? Did you come straight to DC? Did you say, let me get my hands wet in some other work? Because like I keep hearing forensics and I'm like, I'm trying not to picture you walking around with like a magnifying glass saying, where the fingerprints at? What's going on? Who did this? But that's what I think of when I think of forensics.
Yes. So my training, even though I was on the track to be licensed, it was heavily filled with the law of mental health and how to document and how to be an expert witness and submitting documents to the court. As a matter of fact, they used my capstone as an example because it was that good. I just wanted to toot my own.
What's a capstone? I don't know what those things are. Yeah.
So the capstone, we had to complete it in order to graduate.
Okay.
And so what we had to do a complete case conceptualization with the report that was given to the court. And so with a case conceptualization, you are meeting with the client on multiple occasions and you're giving a complete background of their history. And then you're setting up why they came to court, what the court needs you to answer, what their diagnosis is, what supports they need, and how you're going to treat them.
So you were thorough. That's just the way of saying you were thorough. You was her, as they would say. You are her. Okay. So that why you went to North Carolina A&T, or?
I did. I went. My brother got accepted.
Oh. Before,
because he's 13 years older than me. So I was in kindergarten and he started freshman year of college. And so he got accepted. My mom was like, right now where we at, you need to go to Elizabeth City State because, your dad works there.
Elizabeth City gets a lot of people though.
It does.
They get a lot of people. Yeah, they get a lot of people.
The city raised me. Yeah. Right. But financially, they just couldn't.
Okay.
And so when it was my turn, being the baby sister and, the spoiled one. I got accepted and I was like, no, but I'm going. And I'm going for me and my brother.
Okay. Well, shout out to you. Yes. Okay, so your work is trauma informed, right? And being trauma informed, you've made a lot of content that has to do with creating space, boundaries, and asserting not only opinion, but why this is important. So when it comes to the racial side of mental health, what are your goals? What are you looking to do and facilitate?
I want people to understand that there are so many parts of psychology and mental health that didn't have us in mind. And it's important to understand that even though it didn't have us in mind, we still showed up even before, Freud and all of those people. We still showed up. And that our ancestral history plays a role in our mental wellness.
Okay.
It's very important because there's a lot of, like, have you ever had like a strong push or drive towards someone or something and had no idea why or what it was?
Yeah.
And so when I start incorporating those things, of course, in spaces, they're like, no. I'm like, no, because our genetic makeup is made up of all of these things. Our bodies know. It's not when we were just born. Our bodies are connected to our ancestors. Our bodies are connected to these rituals and all of these things, but we have no pinpoint. We don't know where it's coming from, and then that can cause some disruption within ourselves. And so when we bring that into this space and making it okay, you're connecting all of it. I'm not just focused on your symptoms again.
Have you seen the new Spider-Man?
I have not.
Okay, it sounds like the Into the Spider-Verse and how all the webs are connected. But do you think that has actually been a part of the reason that there's only, I think, is it like less than 4% therapists of color right now? And the whole makeup of therapy across the U.S.? I just do U.S. numbers because world numbers is like, I don't know about those stats right now.
I get it.
Yeah.
It could be a big reason. I'm not exactly sure. But you also understand that there are still Black people who call what I do woo-woo stuff.
Are you talking about because the holistic stuff or just being a therapist, period?
Being a therapist, period, right? It's a misconception of, because there's such distrust of the medical, we get lumped together. And I get it. I understand. Because they did use us.
Experimented on us.
Right.
Yeah.
But they also used therapists back then to also figure out how to do it and how to coerce you to let them do it.
Or break up the family.
Exactly.
Also. Yeah.
And so I get it. There's medical trauma that we do not tackle today. We often tell people that they need to get over themselves and just listen and comply.
You've said that's people?
No.
Because I'll say that's people.
No.
No. Oh, that's crazy. I wish someone would say that to me. What?
No.
No.
Society and sometimes it's insinuated by some therapists that have huge platforms.
I like the way you word that. Yeah. Pew, pew, pew. So, as a therapist who has a smaller platform that's reaching out to the community, how do you go about facilitating what you're looking to change? Because, like, I think your messaging is on point. And you've had, I think the worst thing you can do as a creator is go viral. Because then it's like, all right, we'll go do it again.
Right.
And I think you've done a good job of fighting the pressure of wanting to do it again. Right now, you're looking to just do it correct. What's your mindset when it comes to creating content as a therapist?
Creating content as a therapist I think it's a good thing, but I also think that we also have to be careful of not running that rat race. Because
tell me more. Take your time. Take your time. That's a big statement. Take your time. Tell me more.
Because what has happened is that, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but therapy has become a trend.
Yeah.
And therapy is not something that you can jump in and jump out of. It's a continual process. And there's a lot of people who have large platforms who are creating a false sense of security. If you do all of these things, you'll be okay. If you do all of these things, you'll be feeling your best self. And if not, then something's not necessarily wrong with you, but you may be doing it wrong. And so people are downloading this blueprint and trying to follow it exactly. And that's also not what therapy is.
Yeah.
And I always tell my clients that this is not something that you can just pick up one day and put down.
Yeah.
Because life happens all the time. And what happens when when therapy's not cool anymore?
Yeah. I tell you what happened. People stop giving a fuck. Don't blame them, right? So that's actually been one of my concerns when I started doing what I did with Get Home Safe, because I was like, all right, we don't want to make therapy popular. We're not here to make therapy cool. No, that's not what we're doing. We are, hey, there are other resources you can tap into. Are you tapping into this resource? So my job, that I made up for myself, is I want to have the hard conversation with you. What are you pushing back on? What are you afraid of? Okay, cool. I only want to put Black therapists that you have access to in front of you, who I work with personally. You've known me for years. You guys know what I'm about. You know, I've always been big on community, hugs. I've had some very deep conversations of hurt with a lot of folks. So instead of people feeling great after talking to me that they got it off their chest, I wanted to give them the option of, okay, what if I introduce you to someone who you wouldn't feel so great talking to in the beginning, but you would start to see a change for yourself? Because leaning on each other is a part of the process when it comes to therapy and growing, but your friend isn't your solution. And even though I'm friends with a lot of people, if I pass away, what do you do? Because eventually I'm going to die one day. Get what I'm saying? And that was a scary conversation with a couple of people that realized they needed a therapist because they have other friends who aren't just me that were their crutch to not get it done. And it's like, if you think your friend is a crutch and you've had great convos and you got it off your chest, how many times have you been the air for your friend? Chances are probably not, because it's a lot. When you get things off your chest, you don't want to stay there and soak in it, try to run. I'm going to go shower. Hey, you've been a great help. And what I wanted to do also for myself, because like in my experience leading up to what happened, one of her words herself for years that she struggled with was, I just want a therapist of color. If I could just find a therapist, someone I can talk to, maybe I can have a chance to one day get the help that I need from someone that I feel is relatable. So imagine you see someone try and like within the second meeting, it's not going to work. And then they stop. I ain't never been there. I ain't never been in that dark place, or at that time, I ain't never dealt with suicidal ideations. So like, I can relate, but I would cheer for you. Great cheerleader. I got quality pom-poms, right? But then like, things started hitting the fan. And when things hit the fan, the human brain holds on to one moment that lets you know and signifies, hey man, there could have been a difference here. So like, if you can't get it and that person couldn't get it, can you give it to other people until you can get it? And then you go about, all right, what's education? What does that look like for me? Okay, what did that look like for them? All right, what's belief? What did that look like for us? Okay, cool. Did anybody ever get that help? What does it look like people do get help? All right, put yourself in position to have the hard conversations. And then like, For me, it's been a journey of really being in the middle of the whirlpool and realizing, oh, this all just flows into one point. It really does. But I do understand people's pushback to getting help. Like, forgiveness sounds easy on paper until you're the person who has to do the forgiving. It just does. It just does. We gotta be realistic about that.
Forgiveness is a personal journey. One gets to facilitate that, but the person who wants to do it.
And people, you don't get to tell people when they need to forgive someone. You can make a suggestion, but like, until you had someone break into your car 3 times while your son was in high school and had it carjacked, until you had one of your best friends shot right in front of you and die in your arms, until you've had an aunt or uncle come at you wrong and do something unforgivable to you or your own, forgiveness is in books and story tales and fairy tales. And some people have the opportunity to have it and some people don't. But I think there's this misconception that forgiveness means you're going to be happy about it after. It's acceptance. All right, it's not board for acceptance.
Not forgiving doesn't mean that I'm in this dark hole and feeling crappy about myself.
Yeah. One of the most eye-opening things was realizing that forgiveness really isn't about the person. It's not. Some folks just want the opportunity to move on. Like for me, I know I'm blessed to have come out of that situation still seeing tomorrow and figuring out ways to see tomorrow, and like, hey, have people that I honestly love and understand what love looks like past what I've been through and past what they've been through, but also understanding like I help others so I can help myself. But you do need to be honest with who you are and who you're not. That's why I'm big on, hey, I'm not a therapist. Folks like, oh, you should become a therapist, you'd be amazing. Let's not do that. I think what we've made so far is the goal. 220 people from 2019 to present is a large number of accomplishment, but there's so much more to be had and so much more conversations to have. So with that being said, when people reach out to you or they see the content that you're making, what do you wish for them to walk away with?
I wish for them to walk away with a comfort with themselves.
Okay.
Wherever they are in life, right? And we take away where they want to be and where they've been, but where you are right now, a comfort with yourself. Because with the comfort comes so much. It comes acknowledgement. Acknowledgement comes with it. The ability to listen and receive and then implement.
Okay.
Right? Which is so important. The implementation is very important. So I think that's what my hope is that they walk away with.
Do you ever get afraid that the content you make will be digested incorrectly or implemented in the wrong places?
Absolutely. That's what could happen anytime you speak in front of a lot of people, or it could reach a lot of people.
The reason I asked this question is, so the event that we did for creating that safe space for men that I told you about, vulnerability was the focus, right? And I like to do this thing that if I'm going to educate you and give you advice, I need to do the research, because if you decide to do research, I need to see what are all the walls you're going to run into as you do research yourself outside of me. I went on the chat of GPT, the AI stuff, and Google and everything else, and I looked up vulnerability, and Google gave me like the most plain definition of vulnerability. Like if Jane had a plane, that's what Google gave me, right? And then take your time. And then I went to ChatGPT just to see like, all right, how does it define vulnerability over here? And it gave me like 5 to 6 vague definitions, one having to do with technology, another one having to do with society, another one having to do with like mechanics. And I said, okay, so if I were to teach someone how to be vulnerable, how would we go about that? Because I'm always curious, like, at the end of the day, step by step is a template of how do you go about this. And then it came across the screen, well, we can't help you out there. You should seek professional help because this information could be used in a bad way if it was to be put out there. And it's like, if I can't look up vulnerability and how I'd want to create vulnerability for myself or to help people, and someone's going to be in this position to look it up who's never had vulnerability before or has never had the right people around them to set examples of what vulnerability should look and feel like, how are people supposed to help themselves if there's so many different platforms that either stonewall the tools that we need since technology is supposed to help, or tell you you should reach out to a professional? Because I don't think everything in life should be reaching out to a professional. You have to experience something at some point that's not just betrayal. It's enough of that. It's enough betrayal right now.
And then did it give you suggestions on
No.
where to? Okay.
No. Everything was, I had to like socially engineer my way to like figure things out. And I don't like taking that path because it's like, I don't want to practice that. I don't want to practice asking the right question to get something to give me the right answer. Cause like, it's easy to do that here, and then you start doing that with people because you see it works here, and it's like, no, I don't know. I'd rather we not do that. And I mean, you know, I got enough done, but like even with that, it's like when I get on camera and I do these conversations, I either run it past therapists that I'm doing work with, or I run it alongside my own experience and say, hey, these are the things you could run into. This is what you need to be careful of. And then I always frame it with, this is what you need to ask yourself while you're in this process. Because like, at the end of the day, we're all here to feel good, hopefully. But are you going to feel good without guilt? Do you understand what that is? What are your morals? I don't ever get those answers on those things. I just give you the suggestions. Okay. And if you reach out, we have a conversation. If you need help, I'll be like, Mom, boy, you need help. But if you don't need help and you have it, don't be afraid to let me know what your next step looks like. Because, like, I don't think everybody wants peace. Some people want understanding. Some people want to be understood. Some people would like to not be judged for existing as is. And sometimes people want to raise hell. I'm the very last one. So instead of raising hell, I'm like, all right, well, before we start burning things, how do we do this correctly? And what should that look like? Because, like, you know, I do care about the people that are in my life. That'd be crazy if I didn't. Like, so you do all these great things, you don't care? That's wild. But have you ever had to facilitate vulnerability or give people words of wisdom when it comes to, like, you've gone through a lot, but you have to try?
I have.
Okay. Well, what has that looked like for you in your work?
It's gone well.
Okay.
And I do want to say that I'm very specific about the types of clients that are for me.
Okay.
Like I was.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, because I tell prospective clients, that's why I do my consultation. I'm not one of those therapists that doesn't believe in consultations, because therapy is like dating, and I think that you do need to do a consultation to make sure that I'm the right fit.
More than one consultation or just one?
So it's just one.
Okay. I know we talked about the whole I need 5 times to figure out what's going on over there. So.
Well, no, so the consultation is before you even become a client.
Okay.
And I always tell people, come with your list of questions and let me know what you're experiencing. So not only do I know that I'm the right fit for you and can support you, but you also can feel my energy and see how, you know, it flows to make sure that it feels good for you.
That's a lot of Reiki talk, but keep going. Listen.
But I have facilitated conversations about vulnerability, and with clients' permission, shared a little bit of what it feels like to be vulnerable from my perspective. And I find that helps a lot of people, prospective clients. That's why I do my consultation. I'm not one of those therapists that doesn't believe in consultations, because therapy is like dating, and I think that you do need to do a consultation to make sure that I'm the right fit.
More than one consultation or just one?
So it's just one.
Okay. I know we talked about, I need 5 times to figure out what's going on over there. So,
Well, no, so the consultation is before you even become a client.
okay.
And I always tell people, come with your list of questions and let me know what you're experiencing. So not only do I know that I'm the right fit for you and can support you, but you also can feel my energy and see how, it flows to make sure that it feels good for you.
There's a lot of Reiki talk, but keep going, listening.
But I have facilitated conversations about vulnerability, and with clients' permission, shared a little bit of what it feels like to be vulnerable from my perspective. And I find that helps a lot of people, especially because people still think we don't have an issue with vulnerability, or that we're not like.
Would you say you mean Black or just people?
Therapists. People still have this view that, we're perfect, got all our stuff figured out. We don't have an issue with vulnerability. We don't get anxious.
Yeah, y'all be the most anxious in the room sometimes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if we go with that, what you just said, what part of my vulnerability conversations is, before I speak, I'm a nervous wreck, and I physically am ill. But I know what works for me and who to bring with me to help me with that.
Does Tums work?
It does not.
I'm sorry.
It does not.
I'm sorry. I know it's a brand that's advertised really strong, and that way it works for some folks, but I got you. I had to say Tums. They're too well known. Yeah. All right. So, where can the people find you?
And they can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Pride of Nyla, PRIDEOSNYLA. And I'm on how many platforms?
Give it the flanks. What platforms?
I'm on Therapy for Black Girls.
Oh, okay.
I am on Black Girls Psychology Today.
Okay. Oh, I'm about to just be like, all right, so let's talk about these specific things. All right.
And Inclusive Therapist. I am on Inclusive Therapist, and also I'm on the Open Path Collective.
Okay, how is that platform?
It's excellent.
Okay.
So
excellent. Okay.
It's a great platform for people who don't have insurance, or their insurance is not the greatest.
Okay. Well, shout out to you for making yourself so accessible to folks. What's one piece of advice you would want to give to someone who's looking to become a therapist, who didn't know they wanted to be a therapist in 2nd grade?
One piece of advice to anyone who wants to be a therapist, I would say start thinking about your own lane. How do you want to show up for the community that you will ultimately be serving and supporting?
Okay. And for someone who is looking to get services from a therapist, what would be your advice for them when it comes to the dating game of figuring out their right fit for a therapist?
Figure out what you need, and I hesitated because that's a loaded question, right? It's a loaded question because
you can keep talking. I mean, this one is hot, but like, yeah, you Gucci. What's up?
Because a lot of times when I ask people what they need, they've either never been asked that or never stopped to think about what they need.
I had that moment on Thursday with one of the folks, and did I tell you the example of if someone breaks into the home?
Mm-hmm.
Did we do that one on camera?
I don't think so.
Okay, so, and I'm going to use men as an example because this more is in relation to men than to women. If anybody disagrees, that's on them. If someone breaks into the home, right, the expectancy is the man needs to go check on what has happened, and he has to now defend the home, right? That's a man's role. And when it comes to vulnerability, men only see themselves as what can I do? And society sees them as what can they do? So between Twitter, Instagram, and all these other places, that's like, why can't men be more vulnerable? It's why would they ever think they could be vulnerable if you only view yourself as I need to be the breadwinner, if you only view yourself as I need to be the defender, that means that anything that is seen as weak or a weak moment, you're not allowed to have those moments with other people. You don't get to check who broke into the house and go back to your wife and said, I was so scared. People do, very few. I'm going to take a couple of shots. Just give me a couple of minutes. If she asks, am I okay? Am I? And when it comes to what you just said, that really does play another part, and not just the human psyche, but when life has been so blasphemously cruel to you, with women, you're not going to know what being treated nice is. You're more so just happy the messed up thing isn't happening anymore. And that's really the starting line for someone treating you nice. As long as I'm not getting treated like how I used to, then everything's okay. And sometimes that's not. Sometimes you've now accepted the bare minimum as the most, and you're just happy to have the bare covered.
Okay. I've had quite a few of those conversations too.
Yeah. I hope they went somewhere nice, hopefully.
Most
They don't sound like they gone south. I mean, you have a great record. Your face has been very honest with me about particular things. So, like, people have disagreed with you.
They absolutely have.
Yeah, they've disagreed with you. But I think your words have probably reached them later down the road. It's like, oh, damn, she got me.
and I know how that feels to be on the client side.
Oh, yeah. As a therapist who is in therapy, it's hard to be a therapist in therapy and not psychoanalyze yourself in the situation. Like how to react.
Not for me. It's a breath of fresh air.
Okay. Why is it a breath of fresh air?
I don't have to have any of those hats on when I sit in front of my therapist, and it is a safe space.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you can afford to have yourself a safe space, and it has nothing to do with money. I mean, you just put yourself in a position. The folks don't be, oh, she's a therapist, she making money. Now a lot of y'all is broke out here.
That is so true.
It broke out here. Yeah.
Because they don't.
It's a misconception because it's so popular. And it's like, well, therapists having a lot of clients doesn't equate to their clients are paying them big money, or they're not getting burnt out. Because if you're burnt out while making money, you're broke. To me, as a therapist,
yeah.
When it comes to like, not broke, but like you can't enjoy the money that you're making because it's coming at another price. You're paying two prices instead of one, and like you technically still have to make things affordable for the clients to have a fighting chance. Unless you're some of those other platforms that you referenced earlier that I'll be minding my business on until you bring it up one day. Chit chat. So no.
Yes, and then insurance companies, their reimbursement rate doesn't.
Oh, are the insurance companies like the government where like you'll get paid something like but months later, so they're like, hey man, you figure it out until we get to you?
Yes, or they will deny claims and then you gotta fight with them to get your money.
I'm gonna end on this question. A story time. You've had a client, you guys are making amazing work. This person has come so far. But in the background, the insurance company is fighting the claims to pay for the client service. Have you been in that position before?
No, right now.
What does that do to you? And do you separate your feelings towards the client from the insurance company?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
If it's not resolved, then we can set up a payment plan.
Okay.
Right? And then if it is resolved, then we're all good. But I'm not in a position to just be like, oh, well, they're not paying. Come back when they can. That's just, I can't talk. So it's a lot of after the kids are asleep, and I'm looking at husband, he's looking at me, and I'm like,
That's adorable. Oh, it's too bad. Hey, let's get into black. Let's get into it.
Washingtonian.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, my bad. Keep going.
It's okay. No, I just, just kind of lay in his arms and cry a little bit. And then we switch off. He'll tell me what happened at work. So, yeah.
That sounds like a beautiful relationship that we'll talk about one day. We actually do a lot of great talking stuff, too. Like when she been through a lot. Bless her heart, she been through a lot. She's doing a great job, though. I be rooting for her. I be telling her sometimes you gotta just say fuck these niggas, even if they
house blood. Let me say.
And like it's not personal. Personal to your family isn't personal to me. You need to be honest with the people that are closest to you, because it's not that you don't want them to become your enemy, but you shouldn't bend over backwards for people that you love. They should be willing to understand love comes with a price, and not everybody has the bank account for that. So we're going to have to just change things. And that's it. Yeah. So shout out to husband. That's adorable. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Mental Health Monday with Jasmine. See you later, homies.
See ya.
You did a great job, by the way. You're welcome. My phone's going to be like, I hate you so much.